What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Breaking Down the Bees, Bellator 261. And as far as the Bees go, Bellator is by far the best. I mean, clearly, if you're into the A's, you like the UFC. I used to consider PFL to be the Bees, but I may have to change the name of that show to Breaking Down the C's. But Bellator offers a steady product. The only reason you would consider it to be a B league is a lot of these guys are just young and developing and up and comers. And could they be good? Yeah. Could they get bad? Also, yeah. And that remains to be seen. But because they're not proven, they're still B League guys fighting also B League guys. And we just kind of differentiate, whose wrestling is legit and who's somebody who quite simply just wrestled back in the day. But Bellator offers all these guys a great chance. And so let's jump into things. We'll start at the main event. Tim Johnson versus Valdine Moldovsky. Oh, yeah, again, Tim Johnson's a UFC washout. I don't say that in a negative way. He's somebody that left the organization coming off a win over Marcelo Golm. And listen, he really isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. At this stage in his career, he's 36 years old, but Tim Johnson's a big body. B, he does have a wrestling background, a guy that wrestled Division II. He's a two-time D2 All-American out of the University of Minnesota Moorhead. And again, is he a guy that's going to go hit a blast double in the center of the ring? No, not at all. But can he use that size, use that kind of a Greco-Roman style to keep you up against the cage, dig those double underhooks, put pressure on you, tire you out? Yes. But his Tim Johnson striking's actually come a long way, I believe. When he first came to the UFC, his chin's suspect at times, but I mean, he's mostly just one of these big guys that tries to enter the pocket on a straight line, is there to get intercepted. He lists himself in his own fighting style. Despite a wrestling background, he lists himself as a brawler, and you do kind of see that in the early stages of his UFC run. Losing to legit guys, and you consider Jared Rosholt, you want to talk about a D2, two-time D2 All-American? No. Jared Rosholt, the man, D1 All-American, guy that has records at the University of Oklahoma, just a much better wrestler all around. So you lose that fight fair. You lose to Alexander Volkov, who we're going to see in the main event on Saturday. Again, there's no problem there. I lost to Junior Albini. I do see a problem there. Again, he does get clipped and he gets chin checked, but he has a way of coming back. He has a way of not losing these back-to-back fights, and things are fairly going well for him. Leaves the organization, beating Marcelo Golm, and then now signs with Bellator. Now it's mixed results early. Loses his first two fights for Bellator. But again, he's fighting Chait Kongo and Vitaly Minikov that do represent two of the better guys on the roster. In fact, ironically enough, he's supposed to fight Valdine Moldovsky, his current opponent, back in August 2019. Moldovsky pulls out, and in comes Vitaly Minikov, which is not exactly a replacement opponent, a much tougher opponent. And as such, Tim goes out there and he gets handled. If he doesn't have that wrestling advantage on you, or the striking advantage on you, it's going to be a tough night for him. But then he kind of hits a second win, despite the fact that he's 36 at heavyweight, not super old. He kind of gets into his rhythm, and that's where you've seen this latest 3-fight winning streak. Kicked off with the Tyrell Fortune fight. He's completely written off. He's a plus 640 underdog against Tyrell Fortune, who's undefeated. Another one of these standout collegiate wrestlers. Bellator's got a lot of hype on him. Even now, he's actually been pretty flawless since the Timothy Johnson fight. But you see how his hands have improved a lot. He's not just that brawler anymore. He sets up his punches a lot better. His footwork's a lot better. And he slips a lot of punches now. And so the Matt Mitrione fight, it's an easy takedown from him. And from there, he mauls him. But again, you see now that he's got the wrestling. Okay, he uses it against Mitrione. He's got the striking, he uses against Tyrell Fortune. And he's able to mix these skills together pretty well. Again, a guy that's still kind of making advancements in his game and getting better. The rematch with Chait Kongo, because again, he loses by first round knockout the first time he fights Kongo, 1 minute and 8 seconds, chinny potentially. But that second time, split, greasy, sure. But I mean, just wears on him up against the cage. And so the reason I keep bringing on this just wearing on guys is that's the one issue I'm seeing with Valentin Moldovsky. Yeah, I think he does win this fight, but at 3-1, it almost just seems too big of a price. He's not a big heavyweight. He's a guy that clocks in at 6'1", 234 pounds. Now, I know what you're thinking, 234 is still pretty big, but honestly, when you see his frame and you see some of these other fights that he's weighed in for, he's got the frame of a 205-pound man. The thing is that he fights guys that, they're a little bit lackluster, and he's able to toss them around. Being the smaller guy, too, he's just got great cardio. He's faster heavyweight, surely, because he's a little bit undersized, but he just keeps going and going and going. And for a guy that's a little bit undersized, doesn't seem to matter. I mean, he tosses these big boys around with a lot of frequency. I mean, he is a pretty touted guy throughout his entire career, really. He was a combat sambo world champion, both in Russia and in Europe. Pretty solid. Technically speaking, he's born in Ukraine. I think the part that he's born in is currently part of Russia. So, he'll rep that Russian flag, but I'm pretty sure he is Ukrainian. regardless, I mean, his combat sambo career, pretty solid. As far as his MMA career goes, again, pretty solid. He wins his first 5 fights, signs with Ryzen, a major promotion, shows wins over Carl Albrechtsen, the Swedish standout wrestler, who's solid, also in the Bellator light heavyweight tournament. The Mir Ali Akbari fight. So he loses a split to Ali Akbari. I agree with the decision, right? Ali Akbari takes him down 9 times. But man, this guy just keeps working his way back up. He's also only like 24 years old at the time. Like he's really young when he fights Ali Akbari. And Ali Akbari is a legitimate heavyweight, okay? A guy that wrestled nationally, at the Worlds for Iran, and a guy that's also banned from wrestling internationally because of steroid allegations. He's a beast of a man in a jurisdiction that does not test their athletes. Yeah, beating him was going to be one hell of a task, especially in a wrestling match. And Akbari tosses him around, but I was like, he had good cardio. He never quit fighting. He would work his way back up. He'd land some strikes. He kept with it. They gave him a split decision loss because he landed the better strikes despite getting taken down. But if this is North America, I mean, he loses that decision all day long. It's a good learning experience from him. Bellator scoops him up right away. And where he's fighting heavyweights, again, he doesn't have issue with size. Karl Shugmatov is a big boy. He tossed him around, no problem, right? Ernest James, the ref should have, the fight should have never been booked in the first place. Ernest, both of his eyes are swollen shut after the first round. He takes a lot of damage in that fight. Again, what do you take away from that? Should never been booked in the first place. The Linton Vassell fight, Linton Vassell is not a heavyweight. I guess neither is Moldovsky, but it's an age Linton Vassell who's fighting up a weight class, like you give him pass, but it's this Ayala fight and Roy Nelson. So again, it's short on like credible wins. Ayala's not exactly, a marquee heavyweight, and Roy Nelson's in his 40s at this point and way past due. It's the manner in which he handles them. Ayala's 265 pounds, and yet it's Moldovsky that goes out and takes him down 10 times. Absolutely dominates him, pillar to post, 3 full rounds, a big boy, and never once gasses out. And now you got the Roy Nelson fight where he does everything. He controls Roy against the cage. He stuffs all the takedowns. He batters him with the striking. Back when he was in Ryzen, he seemed to be a striker, but his chin's way up in the air. His shots are from the hip side or they're loopy hooks. He's not a refined striker. It's now he's relying a lot on his wrestling, and he's mixing in that game altogether. So when you go and you check him out, say, I guess on Wikipedia, this is I think pretty interesting, right? As he's fighting pro MMA, so he signs with Bellator in 2017, right? He fought for Ryzen 2016. He squeezed in 3 fights in a fight in Russia. He was active 2016. He signs Bellator in 2017, where he's fought once in 2017, once in 2018, once in 2019, twice in 2020. So active, but not overly active. During that same period of time, 2017 till present day 2021, he's still actively competing in World Sambo Championships. He won 2020 gold at the Worlds in Russia, and he won the 2018 in Bucharest, Hungary golds, both at 100 kilograms plus. He also won the 2018 Athens gold medal and the 2014 Bucharest. Well, that was 2014, so who cares about that one? But what I'm saying is he's been signed to Bellator since 2017, fitting in 1 to 2 fights a year, and still actively competing in these Sambo competitions on the world stage against full-grown men, best Sambo guys in the world, and winning those competitions. So 29 years old, is he the biggest guy? No. But he's mobile for this weight class. He's got great cardio, and he's already had success tossing around these bigger guys. I just keep landing back on the price tag. And at 3-1, is he a home run? Is he a walk in the park? Because that's what we need at 3-1. His strike, he doesn't seem to have the power to knock out Tim Johnson. So he's going to have to just out-hustle and outwork Tim Johnson. Entirely possible, right? But Johnson's going to be live for at least a couple of these rounds to potentially use his own size to slow it down. Does have his own wrestling background, so maybe he doesn't give up these takedowns easily. And if he can grind on Moldovsky, again, Moldovsky's got a better gas tank. He's got a cast iron chin. The way Tim Johnson wins would have to be just a bog of a fight and not entertaining at all. And more often than not, that probably doesn't happen. So I suppose I do agree with the price tag, but I'm a little bit gun shy on jumping in myself because I do see some passive victory for Tim Johnson. I don't want to overwrite the guy. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. He's doing some good things. Moldovsky is an undersized heavyweight who, maybe spending too much time competing in combat Sambo and not enough time, working on his refined MMA game. But all the same, I actually do like what I see out of this kid. And, Bellator, like PFL, when you let a bunch of these Russian guys in, they're going to take over. Like, it's what's going to happen. You're going to have a Russian as champ in all your weight classes. And you got to find a way to market them, man, because they got names that people can't pronounce. They've got maybe they can't speak the language. They're not the most marketable people, but they're the toughest people on the planet. And so once you let them on the roster, they're going to start winning fights. And Moldovsky, this is a 5-round heavyweight title fight. So if he can just stretch Johnson into those later rounds, I think Johnson will start to fatigue. Moldovsky will start to work on, maybe complete some of his own takedowns and then take it down the stretch. Bellator doesn't usually offer like live betting opportunities. So, that's off the table. As far as a prop goes, I would think like an over 2.5, maybe an over 3.5. But then Moldovsky might be able to take out Tim Johnson late or control those 5 rounds and pick up the decision. Liz Carmouche versus Watanabe. Again, this is like a 2-1 favorite for Liz Carmouche. She is officially minus 225 Watanabe. I wanted to like Watanabe, but I just can't. And you can't overlook Liz Carmouche, man. She's on a serious run right now. 37 years old or not, she's so physically strong for this weight class that these girls just can't compete with her. Now, Watanabe, also physically strong, 32 years old, so this is pretty much a more refined version of what you're going to get out of her. Judo black belt. And again, always comes in great shape. The thing is that she's got no plan B. There's no hands. There's nothing to back it up with. If she doesn't get these takedowns, she's going to be lost. The advantage that she's been having is that she's taking inexperienced fighters on who don't have takedown defense and don't have cardio. And that's kind of where she's been taking these fights and winning these fights. So let's just talk about the 2 Bellator fights. I don't want to waste too much of your time on all these fights in case you just don't care about them. But the 2 Bellator fights, the first one is that Ilara Joanna. And she's getting outstruck pretty soundly in the first round. What she's able to do is eventually realize, geez, I can't strike with this girl. So she mixes in those judo takedowns. She's able to take her down and then controls the fight easy. Once she's on top, Joanne just got nothing to offer for her. So slowly she grinds away at her, and eventually is able to TKO her. Like there's like 21 seconds left on the clock, and the referee finally jumps in and has mercy. Good performance, but again, limited level of competition. It's that fight with Alejandro Lara where pretty much the exact same thing goes down. Now, Lara is a good striker, but Lara is making her look silly in the first 3 minutes of that first round, just absolutely teeing off on her, beating to the punch. Everything's landing crisp. Has Watanabe hurt? Watanabe was able to survive. And then, John McCarthy kept crediting it as like a successful takedown for Watanabe. Good timing on that, but it almost looked like Lara either slipped or did a bonehead decision of closing the distance, but she just like falls to her own back. Watanabe ends up on top. You still score that first round, Lara. Second round, Lara is, again, beating her up pretty good. Rocks her with a set of 3 elbows from the clinch, the third of which sends Watanabe to the canvas. While on the canvas, she like drops down to a knee, pops back up, and then secures a cheeky-ass takedown. Not only can Lara not get up, she's gassed. And then in the third round, she's gassed. And Watanabe realizes at this point, I can just get these easy takedowns and win this fight. So she does. What it comes down to is first round Lara, third round Watanabe. What did you like better in the second round? The takedown and the control from Watanabe? Actually, she ended the round in mount. So that's what I favored. I thought she won the fight. Or Lara hurt her in the early portion, so to speak. That's why it's a split. But, rightful so, winner Watanabe. The problem here running into Liz Carmouche is the desperation takedown is not there to bail you out anymore. If she's walking you down, if she hits you, if she's hurting you standing, if at any point you realize I don't really want to be standing with her, you need to now mix in the takedowns. I just don't think it's there for her. Like Liz Carmouche is a girl that competed at 135 pounds, and other than her height, I suppose she did not look out of place. People would call her female Uriah Faber because like she's jacked, she's physically strong, she can't make 115, she's a little undersized for 35. So 125 is just like a godsend for her, and she's going to be an absolute factor. I'm the kind of person that the older fighters get, especially at lighter weight classes. That's when I start to draw a little bit of hesitancy and a little bit of worry. And again, at 37 years old, at what point does Liz Carmouche start to slow down? But it looks just like she's reinvigorated fighting lesser competition. In the UFC, you got to fight Valentina Shevchenko, Alexis Davis, Miesha Tate, Alexis Davis again, Ronda Rousey. Those are the losses. So all very credible. And in Alexis Davis's case, still cutting it in the UFC and doing a pretty okay job for herself. Ronda Rousey, one of the best ever. For the time frame, era, it's all about era. Miesha Tate, she's legitimately one of the best ever. She kind of fought a lot of the best girls and gave a good account of herself. Those are all credible losses. Can she compete with that level? No. Can she keep with those bigger girls who, again, they all compete at 135? Potentially, again, no. But in Bellator, it's like the roster's a lot thinner, and she's just been looking really good. The Deanna Bennett fight and the Vanessa Porto fight. With Bennett does come from a wrestling background as well, and you see how much physically stronger Carmouche is. Just decimates her, gets her to the ground, submits her with a rear naked choke in the third. Cardio looked good, strength looked good, physicality looked good, and she's motivated, she's fired up, she's confident in herself. She carries that exact same confidence in the Vanessa Porto fight, and Vanessa Porto's physically strong and a problem and has a lot of credible wins over a lot of credible opponents. But yeah, but she was never in that fight with Carmouche. Like, Carmouche does exactly what she needs to do. So this fight with Watanabe, you got judo versus wrestling. Even though judo is a good counter, a counter to wrestling, wrestling is the most dominant of all martial arts. She's going to have that slight advantage. What I do think, though, is that you can use that advantage to just keep this thing standing. And Watanabe has shown no striking, as opposed to Liz Carmouche, who should be able to go out there and beat her up. And whereas the other opponents were giving up takedowns, Carmouche shouldn't. So again, looking at it, it's minus 225 Carmouche. I don't even think that's a bad price tag. I would think that Carmouche wins this thing in by decision. We have seen Watanabe hurt, of course, but she rolled with it. She took it. She kept going. Lara hurt her twice. Both times she made recoveries. And I don't think she's ever been knocked down in her career. And with Carmouche, like, realistically, she's got a submission game, but she's not heavy on that ground and pound, at least not ground and pound stoppages. So if I had to try to take a prop on this one, I guess I would go Carmouche by decision. But even so, 225 Carmouche straight up. I don't think it's the worst one going. Moving on the card, we got Daniel Vical versus Keone Diggs. I think I'm going to take a dog shot on this one, actually, with Daniel Vical. I just think, he's got so much backlash that they're kind of writing him off a little bit. I was kind of surprised to see this line. Is Diggs minus 150 right now? And that's what it opened at, I guess. So it hasn't really moved any. But Diggs is minus 150 versus the comeback on Vical 125. I'm not 100% sure what people are seeing in Diggs that they really like, or that they dig. Get the joke there. First and foremost, we got to see the guy on scales. Absolutely have to see the guy at weigh-ins. I had to look deep into this one to be like, is this fight at 45 or at 55? Because it's at 55. I completely understand why people are betting Keone Diggs, but if it's at 145, like, how could you confidently bet this guy as a favorite in any spot? So again, he's not. No, you think of this, he's a prospect, he's undefeated, he's one of these guys that Bellator is looking to push, but that's not the case. He's 34 years old. He's like 4 months away from his 35th birthday. He ain't no spring chicken, right? And you look at his amateur record, he fights twice in 2007 as an amateur, okay? And then vanishes, comes back in 2012 and fights twice more. So 5-year gap between amateur fights, okay. Turns pro, he fights once in 2014, 2 years after his last amateur fight, comes back and fights once in 2016, 2 years, like, he's fighting every couple of years. There's just not enough there, man. And when you check out his personal story and you check out the interviews on him, it's like, oh, yeah, I was moving around a lot, and I had to get these part-time jobs. And he's from Hawaii, right? And I had to leave Hawaii, and I settled in Arizona, and he was at the MMA lab, and then things didn't work out. So he went back home to Hawaii. And then he come back to LA, and then things didn't work out. Like, it's not as if he's just training the whole time, improving the whole time. It seems like he had a lot of personal adversity he was going through in that time, and he has no notable wins over that period of time, right? So let's say we're going to pick back up his story when Bellator signs him, which is in 2019. In all that time, he's racked up a 7-0 record with no notable victories, competing exclusively at 155 pounds. He beat Scotty Howe in his debut. How? By second round submission. But then the Derek Campos win, that's what puts him on the map. So Campos is a little bit known to Bellator fans. Obviously, he's main card a lot of events for them. He's fought a lot of their top talent. He's a guy that has a decent wrestling. That would be his background. But an athletic guy, good shape, always comes ready to go, has that experience. And, he did put a beating on him pretty good. Fighting out of the southpaw stance, he stung him multiple times standing, and he grinded him up against the ground, or he grinded him when he got to the ground. And what I was really impressed with, Diggs just never got tired. He just worked him the entire time, and he refused to leave him alone. There's 1 second left in the third round, and he's still cranking on his neck. And holy crap, he actually puts him out cold. Buzzer goes, but there's still technically, he's out cold, and there's a second left. So that's what they called it. It was a technical submission at 4:59 of round 3. Impressive that he just kept going and going and going. His cardio looked good. His ground game looked good. His striking looked good, but nothing looked great. And so this is why I'm seeing red flags on him. One, he hasn't fought since that fight. So coming up on a year-long layoff. He's been known to take these layoffs. Outside of Derek Campos, that's his one notable win that he has on his record. But check this. Dig this, Keone Diggs. That Campos fight, he weighed in at 157. So he actually missed weight by a pound, right? Which is an indication you had a bad weight cut, because it's 1 pound. You didn't miss weight by 2 or 3 pounds, and it was like, okay, just stop now. who wants to give up 20%? Or in Bellator's case, a lot of the times it's 30% because they'll just negotiate with the commission. But who wants to give up that on a pound? So technically speaking, yeah, good performance over Campos, but he did miss the weight by the 1 pound. You go and you check. He's got a catch weight of 160, right? He also misses weight previously in his career. So I'm just trying to bring them up really quick. Nick Chastain, kickboxer, that's 155. Okay, so he fights this Tyler Siders for LFA, and it's a catch weight of 160. And then 2 fights prior to that, he comes in, I guess his debut, he weighs in at 157.9. So he's got 9 pro fights. In those 9 pro fights, they were supposed to all be at 55, but he's missed weight twice coming in at 57, including his last fight. And he's also had a catch weight of 160. So to me, he's a big guy. He has trouble making weight. And at 34, 35 years old, it's not going to get any better. And yet, miraculously, he's dropping down to 145 pounds for the first time ever. Missed weight his last time out. Has a history of missing weight. It's happened a couple times. Has fought at a catch weight of 160. Never fought in lower. Coming off a year-long layoff at the age of 34, now is the time to drop down to 145 pounds. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So again, digging into it, he's like, I had to drop down to 145 because my life, basically what he's saying in a nutshell, to like paraphrase, is if I fight at 55, I can eat what I want. I live an unhealthy lifestyle. And as he's living this unhealthy lifestyle, he keeps getting hurt in the gym all the time. That's why he hasn't fought in the last year. He's been getting injured all the time. So he says, I had to clean up my half and has almost nothing to show for it, is making this weight class for the first time despite a history of not being able to make 155. Has questionable training, at various times. Like he was at the MMA lab, but then he bails and he's back in Hawaii, and then he's back in stateside. And you check out his Instagram, like there's literally, I think he's at the RVCA gym, but I mean, most of it's him hanging in the park smoking weed. So I don't have a great indication of how good Diggs is. And now I got to bet him as a minus 150 favorite. Like I just don't see it. Vical, he's damaged goods. He's 36 years old. He's been there in wars and ringers, and by God, but what does he got to do to prove himself? I mean, he's been there. He's done that. He's a 2-time Bellator featherweight, a title challenger. He's fought some of the best guys. He's fought all the best guys. And he's generally given an incredibly good account of himself. Patricio Pitbull, who's the Bellator god, in my opinion, one of the pound-for-pound best fighters I've ever seen. Dude can fight at 3 weight classes and be stunning throughout. He's got a split decision loss to him in a 5-rounder, which was close and competitive. And the first time he got knocked out, this close to knocking out Patricio at the end of the first round. Saved by the bell. Patricio is out, and as he's out, the bell sounds, and they're just like, oh, let's give him a minute, see what happens. And dude, he recovers and knocks out Vical. So, I mean, yeah, that's why Patricio is one of the best all times. But Manuel Sanchez, right? Patricio Pitbull, Goiti Yamauchi, that's another split decision. Those are the guys beating him. Those are the best guys on the roster. Anything short of that, he's beating. Saul Rogers, legit, was the Ultimate Fighter favorite once upon a time before he couldn't get a visa to get across the U.S., so UFC cut him. John Texera, who we'll talk about, beat Emmanuel Sanchez, beat Georgia Karahanian, beat Pat Curran, beat Des Green. These are all very credible victories, and largely almost all at 145. He did step up. Was it the Yamauchi fight? He did fight Goiti Yamauchi at 155 pounds and give a good account of himself. Lost a split decision in that fight, moving up the weight class. But he's traditionally been a 145er. And again, he's amongst the best 145ers they got. He is 36. He is older. But you see the stuff he's posting. He's training out of Germany. The stuff he's posting, like he looks in career best shape. And that little bit of a layoff he's had probably did him some good. He's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Dean Thomas, has spent some time at American Top Team, has good striking, nasty leg kicks, big power in both hands. There's a lot that you can like about him, but he's got that back class and he's got that experience, and they're giving to you as an underdog versus a guy that's quite literally not done anything, but just figures to be the bigger man and the fresher man. Definitely fresher because Vical's got 51 pro fights versus 9 for Diggs, and Vical's only a year and a half older than Diggs, and he's got 51 fights versus 9. So yeah, in that regard, I agree. Diggs is a lot fresher. Diggs is going to be figured to be a little bit bigger of a man. That straight left out of the southpaw stance probably will give Vical trouble. But if I'm trying to figure out who's going to shit in that pie, I mean, I think there's a good chance that it might be Keone Diggs. So at minus 150, I would just hit a straight pass on him. Or if you want to chase an underdog, I think that there's some merit to Vical. Moving on, this is a pretty stacked card top to bottom. Still only on the main cards. And again, these are good fights. But moving on, we got another UFC washout, Miles Jury versus Sidney Outlaw. Again, this is going to be a pretty solid fight. Jury was kind of like, I don't want to say the poster boy for the UFC, but they liked it. They liked him a lot. He's undefeated. He's good looking. He didn't really ever talk a great game. And his style, to me, was never like, it was never going to marinate with the fans. They were never really going to salivate and be like, oh, Miles Jury's fighting. But yeah, they had a good investment into him. And he does pretty solid, man. Outside of losing a split decision to Ally Quinton Tough. So again, he's fighting ultra good competition, loses to the eventual champion, and it's a split decision. But beats Michael Johnson, beats Mike Ricci, beats Diego Sanchez, handily kicked the crap out of Sanchez. And this is a 2014 Sanchez, meaning he was past his prime, but still, way better than he is these days. The Takanara Gomi fight in Japan, not even competitive. Then they book him against Donald Cerrone, and that changed everything. So Cerrone kicks his ass a decision, but Jury never pulls the trigger. And then Jury's on record many times afterwards being like, I had to see a sports psychologist. I'm in my own head. And right around that time is where you do see the decline from him. He loses the Cerrone fight, but that's a huge spot. So you got to give him a pass. Then they book him against Charles Oliveira in his comeback. Well, homie, if that sports psychiatrist was telling you to believe in yourself and you can achieve, that was a bad comeback fight to come to, because as it turns out, there's levels to this, and Jury ain't at that level. So Charles Oliveira mops right through him. And again, I think that's probably tough on the conscience, but he's able to rebound being Mike Bellator. Not a credible victory. It's a credible victory, you know what I mean? But not at the UFC level, not at the elite level. Like, he's still a tough, scrappy guy out of the lab, but what does that do for Jury in his career? Probably not much. And then the Rick Glenn fight, Rick Glenn looked pretty dope last weekend, making his triumphant comeback. But again, it's not great stuff out of Miles Jury. They were looking, UFC at this point probably realizes, he was never going to achieve that potential that they had set aside from him. And they didn't take long to release him, man. You lose to Chad Mendez, a title challenger. You lose to Andre Fili, a guy that's still cutting it on the roster and is a fringe top 15, top 20 gatekeeper type guy. Like, they should have probably given him another fight. I mean, this is a guy that fought Diego, and he fought Cowboy Cerrone and Charles Oliveira and Takanara Gomi. Like, you're just going to do him dirty and release him like that? But they did. He should have found fresh legs with Bellator, but then it turns out the UFC knows a thing or two about releasing fighters. In fact, most of the guys that the UFC released don't really go on to do great things. Jury appeared to be going down that road. He loses his first fight out of the UFC against Benson Henderson, and the UFC washout in Bellator, and then gets a win over Brandon Gertz and Georgi Karahanyan to right the ship, get himself in the right path, but doesn't look great doing it. I mean, the Gertz fight's 1-1 going into the third, and his superior cardio, most guys tend to have superior cardio over Brandon Gertz, but Gertz just pushes a hell of a pace for the first 10 minutes, right? It's 1-1 going into the third. It's not a great look, but gets the win over Gertz. Fine, fair enough, gets the decision victory. The Georgi Karahanyan fight's a split decision. Georgi beats him up the first round. He beats Georgi the third round. It really comes down to an ultra close second round. One judge thought Georgi Karahanyan had enough. Two judges gave him Miles Jury. But this is not like a top free agent signing. This guy was cutting it in the UFC against some of the best guys. He's going to come to Bellator and walk through the park. Like, it hasn't been all that easy. Now quietly, he's 32 years old. He's got a little bit of momentum building up here, but this is going to be an ultra important fight for him, in that if he loses that and has to go back to some type of, pecking order, I just don't think he's got it in him to go back up one more time. With Sidney Outlaw, like, he poses a lot of problems, but it's going to come down to the scale. 100% it's going to come down to the scale. Sidney Outlaw is another one of these guys. I just don't really have faith in him making the weight. If he does make the weight, let's assume he does, he's going to be a lot, I would say, stronger than Miles Jury. He's going to be bigger than Miles Jury. He should be able to wear on Jury. Jury has competed at 145 pounds. Did not look out of place. Sidney Outlaw's fought at 170 pounds. It did not look out of place. He's a big guy, and to be honest, he's got a history of missing weight. Remember on Contender Series, he fought Michael Cora. That was at 170 pounds. And afterwards, doesn't get the contract, but afterwards, Laura Sanko's talking to him. She's like, oh, blah, 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 talk about like your future beyond this. And he's like, well, you know what? I was thinking I'd want to fight welterweights, but I'm thinking now I'm calling out UFC lightweights. Like, this Michael Cora guy was way too strong. He was too strong. That's why I couldn't finish him. I had the choke sunk in, but he was just too strong. Michael Cora is currently 5-5 as a pro. Lost 3 of his next 4 fights after that Contender Series fight. He was not a great fighter, but he's acknowledging he's not quite a 170. He wants to fight at 55. But then when you see him miss weight, that's what's troublesome, is that he'll either fight at 170 pounds. This is the run, right? So he fights Michael Chandler, okay? That's out at a catch weight of 160. Fair. He fights a Cesar Balmaceda, right? This is at a catch weight of 160. Zach Fears is at 170. The Kulak fight, he came in at 171. Rush Manfio, he misses weight by 4 pounds. He comes in at 159 for a 155-pound fight, 159.9. So, 3.9 pounds. That's the third time that he's missed weight. The Cora fight's at 170. Anyways, you can go down the entire list, and he either fights at a catch weight of 160, he fights at 170 pounds, or more often than not, he's missing the 155-pound limit. Now, I know he has made it against Roger Huerta and Adam Piccolotti, and in those fights, he's got that size and he wears on you, but I can't confidently bank that he's going to always be making weight and always be feeling fresh. The one thing with Jury is that his takedown defense is not terribly bad. He's full-time out of Alliance. He's been doing this camp with Jeremy Stevens and Dominic Cruz. He's one of the guys. He's been there for a long time now. He does have good takedown defense and figures to have a striking advantage over Sidney Outlaw. Sidney Outlaw will try to press him up against the cage, peel him to the ground. And if he does, Miles Jury could be in for it. But I think this is going to be a classic Jury fight, just like the Georgie Karahanyan fight, where it's going to come down to the third round and who's got a little bit more gas in the tank and who's spending more time with pressing the guy into the cage and not having their own back pressed in the cage. So I'm going to have to go with Miles Jury. It's hard to find the Piccolotti fight from Sidney Outlaw his last time out, but it almost seems like Piccolotti blew the fight for himself. He takes down Sidney Outlaw twice, takes his back, and just gets way too sloppy with it and allowed Sidney Outlaw to explode and get back up or get out of the position, even end up on top. Those two mistakes is what cost Piccolotti 2 of the rounds and ultimately loses a close split decision. Jury, don't engage this guy to the ground, stuff the takedowns, uses striking. Is Outlaw live? Absolutely live. But it's plus 120 Miles Jury. He's the underdog. And again, I think he's just going to do. It's going to decision. It's going to be a close decision. It could go either way decision. Well, I want the plus side on that. So I think Jury can pull this one out. A plus 120. I'd be willing to give it a shot. I think the last fight of the main card. Last fight of the main card, Christian Edwards versus Simon Bayong. It was originally supposed to be Christian Edwards versus Ben Parrish. That's like the third time they've tried to put this fight together. Christian Edwards had like an irregularity with his heartbeat. I think that's what pulled the fight off the first time. He wasn't medically cleared. And then Ben Parrish just pulled out of this fight like 4 days ago, and you got Simon Bayong stepping in. I think you can make an argument that Simon Bayong is probably a better opponent than Ben Parrish. So, interesting enough for Christian Edwards. I don't love betting on these 22-year-old super whiz kids because it's like I knew what I was doing at 22 and it won this. It was not competing at a high level. It wasn't dealing with the pressure and the stress and the animosity and the vibe and the weight cut and all these different things. Like, there's just so many slip-ups, so much room for mistake, and you'd expect that out of them. I also don't like betting on undefeated fighters. I want to know, how do you beat them, and are they making improvements on that? If a guy gets beat with the wrestling, takedown defense is no good, 5 years ago, there's a string of him getting taken down in these fights, and then they're making that improve. That's what you want to see. Those are the guys you can bank on. Man, he's improving. He's getting better. He has a willingness to learn. With a 22-year-old kid, again, we run into it all the time. The UFC will do it all the time, whether it be a Sage Northcutt or a Chase Hooper or a Paige Van Zandt. They'll bring somebody in, they'll hype them up. It's the next big thing, it's the next big talent, and they could be good fighters. They could be, all right talent. But if you rush them along and put all this pressure on them, they just don't quite get there. And Edwards is just another one of these guys. He's a freak athlete. At least he physically looks like it. He's 6'5" with a 78.5-inch reach. There's a lot of similarities to John Jones. And in fact, he's one of John Jones's chief training partners. That's kind of where his story is. He won a Bellator, what do they call it? Scholarship. It's a Bellator scholarship where they went to Jackson Wink and awarded 2 guys these scholarships where they'd be like, we're going to help you pay some of your bills. You train full time and we're going to feature you on these Bellator cards. John Jones is big on this guy. John Jones is he's been big on a few guys in the past, probably namely Phil Hawes. And even though I don't like Phil Hawes, it's not like he was a complete bust. The guy is fighting in the world's premier mixed martial arts organization and winning fights. And Jones is big into Edwards now. When you see Edwards fight, the thing he does is that he catches a lot of guys at the end of his shot. It's like that 78.5-inch reach. They just don't see it coming. But he's fast. He's explosive. He's got a decent top game. He flows pretty good. Nasty ground and pound. And he's just putting it on these guys, vicious intent. So with these young prospects, you always got to wonder, what? You're going to beat all these guys early in the first round. What's going to happen the later the fight goes, right? All we need is someone to pull you into those second and third rounds. But in this case, man, he looks pretty solid. Like, he wins his first 2 fights with Bellator too fast, 54 seconds, and it makes minute 16. But this Marco Hutch fight, it's his lone decision victory. He wins the first 2 rounds easily, but the third round, he scores a 10-8. It's about as close as you can get to finishing a fight without not finishing the fight. But the whole way through, he just kept mauling him. Cardio checked out. That's a good learning experience for a fight. We need to see round 2. We need to see round 3. He mauled him the whole way. The guy offered nothing in return, but it's like he kept going. Hamza Salim, same thing. You're seeing a progression to his game, but you're also seeing a progression to his grappling because his power is definitely there. That head kick's definitely there. He catches you, you're in a world of shit, but the grappling has been improving. And that's kind of been the key difference for me in wanting to bet a guy, wanting to get behind a guy is like, round out that game and show me a rounding out the game. He's not just defeating on these guys that, another first round finish, 50 seconds. Another first round finish. It's like, show me a little bit of a roundness to everything. And that's what he's doing. So chief sparring partner with John Jones out of Greg Jackson's camp. The hype's there, the prospects there. He's got to prove it, and at least ever so slightly, I do believe that he's doing that. The irregular heartbeat things kind of got me bugged. Like, man, that wasn't even really all that long ago. The commission wouldn't let you compete. Like, do I really want to be betting this guy? But that being said, again, you got to just go by his word in the interviews that you can see with him. But he's pretty adamant, like, man, I was in best shape of my life, ready to roll, felt so good, and they checked this out. And this allowed me to go to the doctors and get some stuff checked out. And all it was is this, and there's no problem, back to normal. But it wasn't like, oh, man, I'd been suffering in training camp. And, oh, man, I've been feeling fatigue. Like, physically, mentally, he's ready to roll. They catch something, and good thing they did. But now he's been able to go back to the drawing board, figure it out, comes into this fight, extended camp, didn't get hurt, didn't pick up any injuries, roll right through it. Looking at the current line, not that many books offer it, apparently. Bellator's, they're slow to the punch like that. Christian Edwards is listed as a minus 425 favorite over Ben Parrish, the original opponent, who's no longer in this spot. And they don't have they do. Just got released. It's Christian Edwards minus 185. So think about that, right? As I mentioned, he's taking on a tougher opponent. He was a 450 favorite over Ben Parrish, and now just a minus 185 favorite over Bayong. But yeah, you're getting a much better price on him. He's got a full camp. Actually, he's got an extended camp. And the key here is going to be get this fight to the ground and use those new profound grappling skills because, yeah, Bayong looks like a problem. He's listed, mind you, I absolutely want to see the weigh-ins and I absolutely want to see the stare down. He's listed at 6'6", but I don't quite believe it. So he would be theoretically an inch taller than Christian Edwards, but Edwards has like a 4.5-inch reach advantage over this guy. So maybe he's really tall but doesn't have a long reach. I don't know, possible. What I'm getting at, though, is when you watch him on the regional scene, he doesn't appear to be super tall. In fact, his last loss is Ernos Papa fight. Ernos Papa is only 6 feet tall, and they pretty much look the same height. In fact, Papa's a lot bigger and stronger than him and is able to muscle him on the ground, take his back, choke him out with a rear naked choke, all in 59 seconds. Very effortless, by the way. He just looked like a fish out of water on the ground. His takedown defense wasn't there. His submission defense wasn't there. And that fight is only... No, I guess it's 3 years ago. Of course, a lot of guys, you're going to make a lot of improvements. 3 years is a long time. He's only 30. He's 27 back then. But since that loss, he's picked up a win over a 5-3 opponent, a first-round win over a 7-9 opponent. He picked up a first-round win over 4 opponent, but a very salty 4-0 opponent. And then this Vitaly Shemetov fight. Vitaly Shemetov is awful in Ryzen, right? He's got one of the most padded records of all time. He's not good. I'm sure they thought he was going to win over Bayong, but Bayong just had to have a pulse to be a live factor in that fight. And so sure enough, he completely beats him up. But he's in wicked shape, like physically jacked up, 6-pack, very strong. Seems like he's got legitimate power in his striking. Gets a lot of these fights done with that power, is able to move guys backwards. I would say he's going to have a more refined striking game than Edwards, Christian Edwards. I would say he'd have a more refined striking game than him, but he's going to be coming up short in a lot of the punches, I think. I think Edwards would be able to dictate the pace, and Edwards has just got to mix in that wrestling. That's what these other guys aren't doing, is mixing the wrestling. Also, he hasn't fought in almost 2 years now. So there has been some layoff, and he got booked to fight Melvin Manoff. The fight fell through. He got booked to fight Lee Chadwick on this card, and when Edwards lost Ben Parrish, and this guy lost his opponent. They were like, oh, well, let's just put this together. So no one's in short notice, so to speak. I just think that Edwards should be able to get the job done. But again, he's a minus 185 favorite. We see these young prospects lose all the time. Would I want a ton of investment there? Yeah, maybe not. But I honestly think that he's going to end up getting this thing to the ground. And if he's on top of Bayong, then he should be able to have his most success fishing for submissions, fishing for that ground and pound, hopefully tire this guy out. And I do think that ground game is there for the taking. If you want to beat this guy, don't stand in front of him and trade bombs. It looks like he can do that. I think you just want to grind on him, tire him out, and take him into that domain. Soren back versus Bobby Lee. This is going to be a fun fight. Again, I don't really agree with the minus 300 price on Soren back, but I understand the price. I am also picking Soren back. I think he's just going to be too physically strong for Bobby Lee. Soren back's like a legitimate prospect, man. I mean, I think he probably should be in the UFC. UFC doesn't pull the trigger on signing him, and what the UFC's loss ends up being Bellator's gain. Bellator does a good job of picking up these European guys and these wrestlers. They get the European guys because they just haven't really been scouted properly by the UFC, I don't think. If you're like 6-0, 7-0 in Europe, the UFC is not going to give you the time of day. You got to like be a UFC veteran. You got to make a little bit of a name for yourself so that they can market you to a North American audience. Whereas Bellator, they go to Europe. They have these flimsy ass cards all the time, and they need to fill it with guys. So why not fill it up with the local undefeated European talent? For the wrestlers, these guys are quite literally be 0-0 or 1-0 or 2-0, and they can sign them. That's another thing the UFC doesn't do. So they end up finding these diamonds in the rough, and Soren Backs, man, he's entertaining, dude. First of all, he comes out to the ring wearing like a fox skin, holding an axe. Like, pretty cool, right? He's got a good little personality, but physically he's strong in there. He's got decent cardio, or good cardio, decent takedown defense, decent wrestling all around, good striking. I would consider him more to be a generalist. What does he do well? Maybe nothing. What does he do bad? Again, probably nothing. He's going to go in there. He's going to use his size on you, wear you down, back you up, land the right hand, and make this a gruel for you. The Scott Clist fight, he beats him 30-24, 30-25, 30-26, right? Absolutely pillar to post, beats the crap out of him. Then he chokes out Martin Stapleton, UFC veteran, first round, effortless. He backs it up with beating Alexander Jacobson, who had a decent enough record. Second round submission, smokes right through him. It's the Paddy Pimblett fight where it's really like, oh shit. So Paddy Pimblett just got signed to the UFC. For whatever reason, is a total hype job. Like, people really seem to like him, and they want to see him compete in the world's top organization, no doubt about it. When he fought Soren back, all three judges scored the first round 10-8 for Paddy Pimblett, right? All three, 10-8 Paddy Pimblett. All three scored every single round, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for Soren back, two of which gave a 10-8 round for Soren back in the fifth. Like, he just broke him down. He moved him back. He took him down. He put a beating on him. He wins the Cage Warriors title. He defended the Cage Warriors title against Morgan Sherrier. And another 5-round fight. He didn't look great in that fight, but again, he's going 5 hard rounds. And then Bellator scoops him up and he beats Tony Brazier 30-26 right across the board. I think that he's got a lot to offer. And this is really no discredit to Bobby Lee. But Bobby Lee, wrestler out of Minnesota, he oftentimes relies on his offensive wrestling to get the job done. He's not a great striker, right? What he's able to do is get a hold of you, get you to the ground, and control these positions. Almost all of his wins, especially those notable wins, whether it be Michael Hill or Zach Shaw or... Dude, does he even have other notable wins? Ashkan Malvari, Ben Newman, let's say. It's like, for the most part, I guess the Newman fight was a flying knee, but for the most part, he needs to rely on his wrestling and taking you down. His striking is just not enough to get the job done. I don't think he's going to have prolonged success taking down Soren back. And even if he does take Soren back down, I think Bach could just get back up. As far as the striking goes, Bach is a better striker. He should back him up, should land the better strikes. I think this is things going 15. I think it goes decision. If I'm trying to improve that Soren back minus 300 price tag and I can get it Bach by decision, I think that's the route that I go. But I do agree that he probably goes out there, gets the victory, and continues his role in Bellator. I think he's an interesting enough prospect. And again, he's got really good personality. Isaiah Hoket versus Corey Samuel. So I think Hoket's the biggest favorite on the card. He's 8-1. He opened at 7-1, which was fair, I suppose. Actually, you know what? You can get him at 650 on some lines, minus 600 on 2 lines. 5 dimes is offering that. You can get him at 6-1. That seems fair enough. You can get him as high as like 9-1 in some spots. What it comes down to is that we just don't know Isaiah Hoket. He can wrestle. Sure, he can wrestle. He wasn't an elite wrestler by any stretch. but he's got no MMA experience. He's 0-0. And so that in itself is a problem. Everything would just have to be a guesstimation. How good is he? How good could he be? Well, he was a good wrestler. Okay, but is he a good fighter? Does he have a good chin? Does he have good cardio? Does he got good submission defense? Does he have good ring IQ? Is he going to go out there and get himself disqualified? Like, these are all massive unknowns that we don't know. And to try to find out a 6-1, 7-1 price tag is a little bit dicey. Now, we'll start off. Actually, yeah, let's start off with the wrestler because he's a 7-1 favorite. I mean, we're all here to see him. Isaiah Hoket, man, he got a lot of good stuff going for him. I wanted to write this stuff down just so I made sure I had it properly, but he's a 4-time state medalist in high school. His best finish at state was a 3rd place finish, but his senior year, he finished 5th, wrestling at 152 pounds. So never wins a state title in high school, something you do see quite a number of higher end wrestlers do win, or even a lot of guys fighting in MMA will have that state wrestling title. He never quite had that, but at the same time, he's a 4-time state medalist, so he was there every year in the competition. As far as his high school wrestling goes, pretty good. He's also Flow National High School All-American, so he's recognized as one of the top recruits at a high school, and all solid stuff. So he actually attends Drexel in Pennsylvania, redshirts his first season, goes 9-8 as a freshman. Again, not great, but he's wrestling in a D1 program at Drexel, which is out of a powerhouse state for wrestling in Pennsylvania. Like, that is all good stuff, and he's still young. But he transfers from Drexel to Fresno State for his second season, goes 15-4, and then has a season-ending injury. So better result. He's redshirting again, but he's getting a little more action anyways. Does fairly well on duels. As a junior, he goes 15-12 for the Bulldogs, and this is his best season for Fresno State, right? Where he actually qualifies for the Big 12 championship. He's the 6th-seeded guy, and he ends up going 2-2 in the tournament. So again, he's wrestling at least with the big dogs. He's in there with some good guys, but he's never, at no point is he a D1 All-American. At no point does he even qualify for the NCAA tournament. He's just a guy that is a serviceable wrestler. He's hard-nosed. He has a strong style, the style that probably would translate well to MMA. But he never hit probably that mountain peak. Again, every season's better. And now his senior season, where you would, in theory, have his best results, he never wrestles as a senior. Yeah, was there something to be left desired? Sure, but he wrestled at 157 and 165. So this fight's at 155. It's actually be like lighter for him. And being that he's wrestled D1 at 165 pounds, I would say he's going to be a fairly strong guy at 55. He wants this fight at the ground. He's probably going to get the fight at the ground. It's going to come down to, like, can he finish it on the ground? Can he wrestle this guy for 15 minutes without getting tired and falling into some flimsy-ass submission? Like, I don't know. But this is why I would be willing to agree. His brother, Josh Hoket, so he was a D1 All-American, also out of Fresno State. But the dude's currently on the practice squad as a running back for the San Francisco 49ers. Despite not really having much of a football background, he was a heavyweight wrestler and a good wrestler. And you see the kind of athleticism, drive, and progression. These guys just mature and they get better and better and better. So whereas Josh is a big boy, he can go and play football. His brother Isaiah is not quite as big, and so he falls into the path of fighting. You're at Fresno, which means you're like an hour out of San Jose. You can go train at AKA, and they got a ton of these wrestlers just like you. But, he does the right thing, in my opinion. He goes to the Body Shop, which is where Antonio McKee is. Same gym that has produced AJ McKee, the undefeated, potential future featherweight champion. They've also produced former champions Emmanuel Noon. Rampage Jackson's worked at the gym. Aaron Pico's been at the gym. Standout undefeated Joey Davis, former I think he was a D3 wrestler, but like a legendary D3 wrestler turned undefeated MMA fighter. Joey Davis, like Antonio McKee knows how to get the best out of these young guys that come from a wrestling base. And I think Hoket put himself in a good position going there and get, specialized attention, working in a small room of guys his size with similar skill sets to him, instead of going to AKA and, fucking around with some Russian guy who does not care about you and will look to take your head off. Like, it's a bigger room. It's harder to get noticed. So it's his first fight. What can you really expect out of him? We're just going on the basis of he knows how to wrestle and he's out of a decent little gym. And is that enough to back somebody as a 7-1 favorite? I don't know. He's initially supposed to fight on Aaron Hughes on this fight, and then in steps in Corey Samuels. So I think this is what kind of seals is that Samuels was 1-9 as an amateur. And that includes losing the first 9 amateur fights consecutively. He's on a 9-fight amateur losing streak, and then he finally gets one over Jared Edelson, who was 0-1. So pumped up from winning his first amateur fight. And now riding the ship, my friend. 1-9. It's got a nice sound to it now, doesn't it? He says, fuck it, I'm going pro. I'm ready. I just won an amateur fight. I'm going pro. And would you know it? He's getting his ass kicked, and he hits like a sweep on. Well, it's not. He does not hit a sweep. His opponent gets a little overzealous, searching for submission, flops over to his back. You have a moment where Corey Samuels gets on top, and this dude double up kicks him. The first one is a grazer. The ref doesn't even call it. The second one doesn't land totally flush. Definitely lands, and it just completely knocks him out. Like he's face first on the ground. The ref has to jump in and stop it, and they give him a disqualification victory. And just like that, my friend, Corey Samuels is an undefeated pro fighter. 1-9 as an amateur. Won that last one. 1-0 as a pro. Disqualification win. Nicest win in the game. It's like, holy shit, dude. But, reality's got to catch up eventually. And sure enough, he loses his next two fights. Second round guillotine choke and a first round knockout against Dean Barry. Dean Barry would probably represent the toughest guy he's fought, and he did not do good. He got knocked out in the first round. He does pick up another win, again, over nobody Potts, but it is a second round triangle choke victory. And whereas I do expect this guy to get routed here, the fact that he even knows what a triangle choke is does make him at least some sort of threat to a guy like Isaiah Hoket, who figures to get the takedown, to figures to spend time in top control. If you could tire him, if you could take a beating for the first round or two, and for whatever reason he does get tired, he's never fought before. He's never fought amateur or pro. He's never been into those deep waters. He's never had the crowd. He's never had the lights. He's never had the TV. He's never had the build-up. He's never had the exposure, right? He's never had any of that. Even his college wrestling career, he wasn't at the ESPN nationally televised NCAA tournament. No. He was the 6th-seeded guy at the Big 12 tournament. That's it. That was the highlight of his career. So there is a lot of pressure going into this spot. If he gets tired, he doesn't close out early, and he makes a mistake, anybody could catch him, right? Anybody. But the fact is that Corey Samuels lost 9 straight amateur fights. Got finished in like 6 of them. There's just not enough there, man. And really, when you look at that Asim Zaidi fight, his pro debut, he got taken down really easily. He got backed up against the cage and taken down really easily. He didn't really seem to have much game off his back. And the second up kick, which, again, it landed. I don't know that it landed as like a debilitating blow, but it basically decapitated him. Like, he's done. He just folds up. It's like, oh, man. If Isaiah Hoket puts some pressure on this guy, he probably TKOs him in the first. And we won't see those flaws in his game 2-3 fights down the road. Bellator loves bringing in these wrestler guys, and some of them do get exposed, but they almost always win that first fight because they come in as 7-1 favorites, and even them learning on the job tends to be enough. So I would say Isaiah Hoket does get the job done, but again, it's big time buyers beware in paying that kind of price tag for him. Jalen Bates versus Cody Matthews. Jalen Bates is a guy that you would feel way better paying that kind of price tag for, because he himself is, big time proven. I think for guys 2-0, he's done everything right. 24 years old, physically a specimen. He's just long and rangy for this weight class, and guys that are going to be fast, they're going to be able to use leverage. As far as grappling goes, striking will come, right? He will get the striking eventually, and when the striking comes, he'll be able to stay to the outside and be tricky and use the kicks and use the jab, and that'll all be good. But to be able to use that length and that leverage as a grappler and to use it effectively, it just makes you such a big problem for guys, man. It's almost like Aljamain Sterling effect. When you're grappling with him on the ground, he can hit so many different moves. He's a lot more flexible. He's got more dexterity, and he really makes you work. And if he's got the cardio in check to work you over and over and over, that's exactly what he's going to do. Jalen Bates can do exactly that. So again, 24 years old, he's young. As an amateur, this kid is a stud. He goes 9-0, perfect 9-0 record. He finishes 7 of those amateur fights inside the distance. These are his last 5 amateur opponents' records. 5-2, pretty decent. 4-1, pretty decent. 6-3, pretty decent. The last 2 guys, 5-0 and 6-0. And he walks right through them as well. He's American top team Portland. He's an Oregon-based fighter. And yeah, man, being under Fabiana Schneider out there, Paige Van Zandt's boyfriend was there for a long time, or I guess it's her husband now. Austin Vanderford, he spent a lot of time there. Ricky Simone, he spent a lot of time there. He also does Gracie Baja Portland. But This is like a powerhouse wrestling team. These guys grind, grind, grind. And he himself is not like, doesn't seem like powerhouse wrestler. It's that he only needs a moment of opportunity to create a scramble. And then he's just all over these guys. So again, standout amateur, turns pro, and Bellator signs him right away. He's the 0-0 prospect coming in. He takes on this Josepino. It's his debut. He looks good. It's that next fight against Jeffrey Glosner. So Jeffrey Glosner actually wrestled at Edinburgh, right? He was a D1, not All-American, but I mean, the dude wrestled out of a D1 program, most notorious for producing Josh Koscheck, amongst others. I believe Gregor Gillespie, I think, also wrestled out of Edinburgh. So regardless, Pennsylvania, great school to wrestle out of, and Gloucester knew how to wrestle. And Jalen Bates fight starts, and he takes him down within 10 seconds, and then proceeds to throttle him on the ground. Does not give him a moment to breathe, doesn't give him a moment to clear himself. The poor son of a bitch lasts the first round, and all that does for him is that he had to go to the second round, and Jalen Bates is just all over him. There's no space. He's just, everything is tight. Everything is on point. His cardio looks good. He looks like a legitimate MMA prospect. I'm really like what I see out of this guy. Go, 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 go. Now, is he one-dimensional? Is he a grappler? What was cool was, even though he's out of Portland, and even though he clearly is a wrestler and a grappler, and this is what his preferred method was, is that he had spent a couple months in Las Vegas at Mayweather's gym strictly working on his boxing. And yet when the fight starts, he doesn't even throw one single punch. Right into the takedown, baby. Man, that's good ring IQ. That's fighting to your best abilities. Yeah, I'm working on my boxing. I would like to know how to box. Maybe someday some guy's going to stuff my takedown, and I have to stay with him. You have to add those different elements to your game, but you can't get away with what got you here and what you're best at. You're fighting some dude. You're 1-0. He's 2-1. Is this the time to work on that boxing you worked at? No. Let's go get the win. Let's, and then we'll continue to work on our boxing. We'll continue to work on those other skills. We'll make the fights as easy as possible. Lucas Brennan, Chris Brennan's kid, he's like 6-0 in Bellator right now. He does the same thing, and everyone gives him shit like, well, how good is he, man? He just subs them in the first round. What do you want him to do? You want him to get into a slobber knocker? You want him to play Rock'em Sock'em Robots? He's 22 years old, right? Should he have a fight of the night just so that you can see what he's made out of? He doesn't fucking know you shit. Go get the win. Fight to the best of your abilities. That's what he does, Then he's a big favorite every time out. That's exactly what Bates is going to do, and he'll get right onto it. Now, Cody Matthews, really, I was actually impressed with what I saw out of this guy. When I first saw his picture on Tapology, I was like, oh, this guy's screwed. But there's actually a little bit that you can like out of him. He has some wrestling credentials as well, but it's really nothing important at all. This is what I could dig up. And it probably wasn't even worth mentioning, but he was a junior regional champ in Maryland at 80 pounds when he was age 12, right? So in elementary school, he's wrestling, and it's just regional. He's not a state champion. He's not going to the bigger tournaments, but the guy's been wrestling from a young age. I think he states 5 or 6 years old. And as far as elementary school goes, he's winning some regional stuff. Is his high school senior year, he goes 30-8 and qualifies for the state championship in Maryland. But I don't see anything of him, placing at state or even medaling at state. Then he attends this Frostburg State University in Maryland. It's a D3 program. In 2019, they officially got bumped to a D2 status, albeit there's no information of him ever wrestling on the team. So we know that he can wrestle, and from tape, you can find tape of him wrestling. It's from a long time ago. He's in high school and stuff, and he's got a D style. He's aggressive. He comes at you. He's got a good low single leg. When the fights are on the ground, how wrestling is, they'll be like, oh, get on all fours, and the guy's gonna ride you for a bit. He's riding them pretty good. He seems like he could be a problem and is a nice developing little fighter, right? His own amateur career, we're talking about how Bates is 9-0. Cody Matthews is a 5-0 amateur as well. Solid amateur. Turns pro, loses a split decision in his debut, and then won in his last fight. And that's all well and good. Here's the key issue, is that he is 5'3", right? He's only 23 years old. He's 5'3" and weighs 125 pounds. He's fought his entire amateur career as a flyweight. He's fought his entire professional career as a flyweight. When he was 12 years old, he weighed 80 pounds, and he didn't really get a whole lot bigger than that as time went by. Again, he's 5'3". He's taking this fight up at 135 pounds, and whereas you might be able to get away with that against some local putts, this ain't the local putts. He's 5'9", so right off the hop, you're going to be giving up 6 inches in the height department. He's got a 73.5 reach, so you're giving up 5 inches in the reach department. And your Maryland regional scene days when you were 12, your 30-8, high school record, or your senior year, and you qualified for state and then got bounced out of the tournament fairly quickly. Like, one would think he's fucked once Jalen Bates puts his hands on him, right? He's going to just get into the ground and have his way. If Bates couldn't get the fight to the ground, I could actually see Cody Matthews having the better hands. Like, he might be able to, if you want to find anything on him, I think he goes by Cody Dakota Matthews. He might interchange the name Cody and Dakota, but it is the same guy. Regardless, if you could see this fight standing, you haven't seen Bates strike for the most part. We know he's been working on Mayweather's, but he hasn't shown it yet. So you can make an assumption that Matthews could potentially beat him in a striking battle, but like Bates not going to have a striking battle. He's just going to stick onto him. He's going to drag him to the ground. He's going to make this miserable for him. I don't think the takedown defense will be enough for Matthews, and so I think Bates has his way. And Bates currently is a 450, minus 450, of course. That makes him a nearly 5-1 favorite. Who wants a part of that? But like, shit, man, I like what I see out of Jalen Bates. So if you're in the market of, like me, whatever, we're going to parlay some big favorites together. This is one of them that I at least don't feel terrible about the prospects of him shitting in my apple pie. And as far as a Bellator, PFL, UFC, weekend-long ticket goes, Bates is the kind of guy that if you got a couple Bates as at 450 and you could put them on the same ticket, it quickly gets to plus money. And those are the guys we want to back. We've already talked about Moldovsky's a 3-1 favorite, but it's like, oh shit, do you feel great about that? Who are the other Christian Edwards is a minus 185. Jesus, Bayong guy's not terribly bad. Soren Bach, Isaiah Hoket, the worries about him. At least with Bates, it's like, shit, this dude's coming a long way. People that work with him are high on him. I'm high on him. Unless he proves me wrong here, or Cody Matthews proves to be the world's greatest flyweight that he can move up to bantamweight and beat up a legitimate prospect. Going to be a tough one. Taylor Johnson versus Lance Wright. This is another one. Maybe I'm missing something because I don't understand why Taylor Johnson's only a minus 275 favorite over Lance Wright. I mean, I think Lance Wright's probably largely outgunned here. Looking at Lance Wright, it's super salty, man. So I guess he had a pretty long amateur career, went 7-1. But as far as the pro career goes, 0-0. Okay, sorry. This might sound like disrespect, but I don't mean it to sound disrespectful in the slightest bit. Really don't. But it's from the Indiana regional scene. And the Indiana regional scene is super, I'm going to say low level just because there's a lot of low level guys on the scene. So you can be a Darren Elkins, you can be a tough guy from the Indiana scene and work your way out of it. But what happens is they fight so many lower level guys, very similar to the Kentucky regional scene. You spend so much time fighting lower level guys that your game never really advances to a level that eventually you have a nice looking record. You get thrust into a Bellator type situation and you're just not quite there. So as an amateur, he was solid. He went 7-1, exclusively fighting on the Indiana regional scene and largely for the most part 0-1. You're 6-1. You're taking on a guy with an 0-1 record. Like, why? Why do that? His lone loss as an amateur, he got knocked out 2 minutes into the first round against a 2-3 opponent. So he's just, as an amateur, it's not nearly as impressive as Bates because Oregon is a legitimate scene. You don't want to be playing around on that regional scene. He turns pro again, and it's the same thing. 0-0 opponent, 0-0 opponent, 0-3 opponent. He takes on Hayward Charles, who's 16-13. Hayward Charles is also a Bellator veteran. He's fought some decent guys. Usually comes up on the wrong end of the victory. But at 16-13, he is experienced, and he's far too experienced for Lance Wright, who again just succumbs and gets us submitted in the second round. He rebounds, beating a 3-3 opponent and the Indiana regional scene, and now he hasn't fought in 14 months. He's 28 years old. They got him listed as fighting at Elevation Fight Team, and obviously he had to get out of Indiana to go test himself in the gym, but the results aren't there as far as paper goes, right? Taylor Johnson, meanwhile, Taylor Johnson's just a lot more built for this. I mean, I actually really like what I see out of him, but he's another guy that's out of ATT Portland, so he's a training partner of Jalon Bates, despite the fact that they're different weight classes, obviously. But yeah, man, see, when you're out of Portland, you're just another one of these guys that's probably wrestled. You're probably really strong. And that's exactly Taylor Johnson, dude. He lettered 4 years in high school. He was a state champion in Oregon his senior year. He was also a 2-letter running back, 2,500 motherfucking yards, 26 touchdowns his senior year, the same year that he won the state title in Oregon at 189 pounds. He redshirts one season, his only season collegiately at the University of Oregon, a wrestling powerhouse, and competes at the Field of Junior Nationals at 189 pounds. Fucking guy can wrestle. The issue is that, like we were talking about with the Jalen Bates, you're young, you're smashing guys. You gotta take it in. You gotta grow. What does smash guys really quickly do for you? And that's Taylor Johnson's problem, is that because he starts MMA, you're 0-0, he's 0-0, but he's wrestled at the University of Oregon. The Ducks, man. He's won a state title in a very, very strong wrestling heavy state. Oh, man, you're going to have a serious problem on your hands. And so he smashes these guys, right? Minute 34, Jamal Pogues, Dan Huber, 8 seconds. Corey Turner, 36 seconds. Luke Bondel, a minute 36. Aaron Chambers, 2:43. The last 4 of which were all for LFA. They like him. They're building him along. Dana likes him. He likes LFA. They bring him onto Contender Series, and he takes on Andre Muniz. Well, as it turns out, Andre Muniz is dope, man. Because, again, what was Taylor Johnson going to do to him? Take him down. He's a wrestler. He's a powerhouse guy. He's strong, physical. We know all that. Good ground and pound. But what are you going to do? You're going to take Andre Muniz down? He's a third-degree BJJ black belt. And, you're 5-0. He's 17-4. He's got so much more experience than you. He's got so much more experience working with the human body and pretzeling them. You should have kept the fight standing and boxed him up because he has no striking. But Taylor Johnson also doesn't really have any striking as well. He's a wrestler. That's kind of all he knows how to do. And because it's been working so well, it hasn't forced him to learn anything new. So he gets a takedown. He gets a solid takedown. You can tell how physically strong this guy is. He's a powerhouse. But Andre Muniz is eventually able to catch him in a rear naked choke. Stems to breaks. They book him against Ed Ruth. And this is super interesting. So Ed Ruth is a 3-time national champion D1. It's the highest accolade you can go in Division I is you win the national title. You're the number 1 wrestler in your weight class in the entire nation. Holmes does it 3 times, right? There's no national champions fighting in the UFC. There's no 2-time national champions. This guy's an anomaly. College wrestling, he never wrestled the Olympics, never wrestled at the Worlds. But as far as college wrestling goes, Penn State alum, sick. Taylor Johnson wrestled 1 season. He redshirted and went to the FILA Junior Nationals. Like, come on, it's not even comparable. But this is MMA, and as it turns out, Taylor Johnson isn't just a wrestler. He's got a pretty good submission game. It's not an Andre Muniz submission game, but he locks up that leg lock. It's a knee bar on Ed Ruth. Cost me a ticket, tell you that much. But it was like, god damn, like this guy's strong. He's going to be a problem. So then they book him against Johnny Eblin. That's why you're getting a good price tag here. They book him against Johnny Eblin, and whereas most people just see the loss, 1, he went to decision. That's hugely important to me. Taylor Johnson needed some rounds under his belt. 2, I'm really high on Johnny Eblin. I mean, he's undefeated for a reason. Diamond Head's got some serious striking, some serious takedown defense, some serious will to win. I like Johnny Eblin a lot. And the fact that Taylor Johnson went out there and did the damn thing with him and grinded him the best of his abilities and went the 3 rounds, to me, is ultra important. And so he's booked to fight Lance Wright 2 weeks ago. I don't know why the fight got canceled, but they've rebooked it here. To me, he's got a massive wrestling advantage over Lance Wright. He should be able to take him down. The only way Wright wins this fight is if he's able to extend Johnson out to, say, the 2nd or the 3rd round, and Johnson, gets tired. But again, I'm happy that he just went 15 minutes. He just showed that his cardio is not terribly bad. He's maturing as a fighter and settling down. He realizes he can't just smash these guys really quick anymore. So, there's a little bit of there's not a ton. You'll see him. He fights like a crazy bastard. But if he can just pace himself a little bit in case he needs to, it would go a long way. I would say that Lance Wright has never fought a guy strong like this. He's never fought a guy that hits hard like this. And if Johnson's able to get this fight to the ground, he's just going to ground and pound TKO him. If Lance Wright is, for whatever reason, to top up his career best performance, like what's his most notable win? Was it the 3-3 opponent? Let me just bring that up really quick. It was definitely that 3-3 opponent. That Gabriel Moda. Did he ever go on to anything? No, he's 4-5 currently. So when he beat him, he was 3-3. 4-5 currently, and that would be his number 1 win. Whereas you got Taylor Johnson fought Andre Muniz, who's in the UFC and looks good. He's going to win over a 3-time national champion in Ed Ruth. And as far as his own regional scene goes, man, he was fighting for LFA, which is the number 1 B league. If I consider Bellator a B league, then yeah, LFA is on a C league level, 100%. but is one of the top feeder promotions for the UFC. That's where they're getting these guys. And he's, he beat a 5-2 opponent, Luke Bondol, a 2-0 opponent, Aaron Chambers, a 4-3 guy, Dan Huber. That's all better stuff than what he's facing here. So at the current price tag, was it Johnson 240 I mentioned? 275. Some money's starting to come in on him, rightfully so. I think he's got him outgunned, and I think that he's somebody that I'm going to probably lean on a little bit. I'll pull the trigger come Friday. I want to watch weigh-ins. I want to wait all that stuff. But with Bellator, you got to keep your eye on the line because you don't want to lose like 100 points on it. They're kind of soft lines, so sometimes it swings 100 points pretty quick. Last but not least, we got John Texera versus John DeJesus. If you banged on John DeJesus on the opener, you are a sharp mind. Because even though this fight's real close, could go either way, he opened up. That's got to be wrong in best fight odds because it was a John Texera minus 300 opener, but they're claiming it was a 230, which is what it's sitting at now. That wasn't it. I had seen John DeJesus open up as like a plus 225. Honestly, again, this is a close fight, and you would say that Macapa is the favorite, John Texera. I mean, he's got the experience. He's fought the better guys, but it's a stylistical clash. It's how the style makes the fights. And John DeJesus has an ugly-looking record and is coming off a loss, pretty devastating loss, I guess. So it's easy to write him off, but I don't quite see it that way. So I guess we'll start with our underdogs. We're going to make an underdog selection here on John DeJesus, who could still be had for plus 175. Yeah, again, it's a totally ugly-looking record, 13-9. But keep this in mind, right? Aaron Phillips fought in the UFC. Billy Carantillo fights in the UFC. Jason Suarez is the undefeated Titan FC champion. Danny Chavez fought in the UFC. Pat Sabatini does fight in the UFC. Bal Algeo fights in the UFC. Franca Buenafuente's fought in a lot of good regional scene guys. He himself has maybe not had that bigger exposure, but he's not a putz by any stretch. And then he loses to Aaron Pico, who's my boy. Despite the losses, man, I've always stuck by this guy's side. He's like a freak talent. Like, so he's got 9 losses, but 7 of them are UFC veterans, and one of them is Aaron Pico. Like, shit, that's really not bad company. He has lost to at least credible enough guys. He doesn't really train I wouldn't say at the highest level. He's at a Pittsburgh MMA. His top training partner would be Kama Worthy, who's in the UFC, who's got skills everywhere, but does have a soft chin. Regardless, John DeJesus is big. He's long. He's really fast, and he wants to mix it up. I'll be honest with you, even though he's come up short in a lot of those fights against notable guys that I'm very familiar with, he hadn't crossed my radar until his Bellator debut when he fought this Vladislav Parubchenko. Now, he comes in, he's a plus 450 underdog to Parubchenko, but it's immediately clear right off the bat that he's very long, and if you step in, man, he's got a nasty knee right up the middle waiting for you. He's got good jab, he's got good, hooks from the outside, but he's got speed, and he's got a tenacity where he'll just keep throwing at you. He allows this 16-1 Ukrainian fighter to just fall behind on the scorecards. Now, in the second round, it's 1-0 for DeJesus. In the second round, well, wouldn't you know it, Parubchenko is able to eventually get the fight to the ground. Once he's on to Jesus, it doesn't really look like Jesus had much of a stand-up game. And then with like a minute left in the round, he gets up and just smashes this Ukrainian guy with a flying knee to the face, shatters his nose. There's blood everywhere. He proceeds to kick his ass that last minute. And so I would score the fight 2 rounds to Jesus at this point. And end up being like, I think they had it 1-1. They all gave the Ukrainian because of the like takedown and a little bit of top control. So it's 1-1, third round, in it to win it. And DeJesus pulls clear on this guy. Cashes as a 450 underdog. Good account of himself. Good chin. Again, speed's there. The endurance is there. The striking was there. When it was getting to a close gut check fight, he did exactly what he needed to do. Solid performance. And so Bellator, classic. Congratulations for cashing that 450 ticket as an underdog. How would you like to try to cash? But that's 650 against Pico. Like, man, he just fought once as a colossal underdog. Like, why would you give him Pico? And I'm pretty firm on this, dude. He went 9 minutes and 12 seconds with Aaron Pico. That's pretty good. The first round, Pico actually has a lot of trouble with DeJesus' striking. Again, the knee up the middle hits him a few times, and that long jab is catching Pico. Pico comes up short on a few of those punches, and eventually he just abandons the striking, shoots the takedown, and you're not going to stuff Aaron Pico's takedown. Let's be real. So DeJesus doesn't. He does a good job of neutralizing some of the damage, eventually working his way back up to his feet, but he's outgunned. In the second round, now that he's thinking about the takedown, he doesn't really let his hands go. He's overthinking it. Pico beats him with a punch, and Pico does knock him out with a standing shot, like absolutely buckles him, puts him down, a little bit of ground and pound. There must have been some bad blood there because like Pico was really mad afterwards. And then you can see him kind of get into an altercation with De Jesus' corner on the side, just like talking shit to them. So there was bad blood there. That was the last time we've seen him. It's a loss that I'm going to give you a free pass on. It was Aaron Pico. The fact is that you almost went 2 rounds with him, and you did give him some looks in the striking department. Fair enough. Texera's been around. He's been there. He's done that. He's fought for the UFC. He's been on The Ultimate Fighter. He's fought in Japan for Rizin. He's got a very credible record for Bellator. He's essentially the split decision king. They call him a Kappa, and I believe Kappa means the weasel. Again, he's very capable of going out there and squeaking out these close decisions. He's a tough enough guy, but keep this in consideration. He signs with Bellator. He is already the Shooter Brazil champ. He lost a split decision to Rodrigo Dam on The Ultimate Fighter. Rodrigo Dam, a bona fide badass, a guy that had fought internationally in Japan, Sengoku, and was the only man to ever knock out George Masvidal prior to Kamaru Usman doing so. And Usman actually pointed out that they had went back and watched the Dam fight. That's where they got like the idea for the shot. Dam's a badass, and he loses a split decision. Then they give him one UFC fight where he fights Hugo Viana, and again loses a split decision, and then they cut him. And he was 12-0 at the time when he lost that split decision to Viana. That's his lone loss. When Bellator signed him, he was 20 wins, 1 loss. Like, sick record, and gave a good account of himself. Beat Justin Lawrence, another Ultimate Fighter veteran. Split decision loss to Daniel Vical, the 2-time title challenger who's in the main event. Decision loss to Pat Curran, the former world champion. Got punched up by AJ McKee. AJ McKee's the man. When he fights that upper echelon, he's in it. They're close. He wins a lot of split decisions. He's lost some split decisions. It's usually close, but you can kind of see that he's not the same version of himself. He used to just walk guys back and beat them up. Good hands, good power, good aggression, good leg kicks, mixes in the takedowns, although his wrestling is not really one of his strong suits. He much prefers to keep the fight standing. It's just everything's close. It's a lot of closeness. A lot of his fights, a lot of closeness. So what the prospect of betting him as a minus 225 favorite, what you're going to end up getting is a close fight. And he might win the decision in that close fight. But you don't want a close fight at 225. I'd rather have the underdog and think that maybe it goes the other way. He's done it before. He's won these close decisions. He's going to have a speed advantage. He's going to have a length advantage. He's going to fight properly from the outside. And then last but not least, John Texera, he hasn't fought in almost 2 years. The last time we saw him fight, Bellator put him on loan to Rizin, where he lost to Makuru Esakura. For the first 2 rounds, he doesn't do anything. He just kind of stares at him and allows Asakura to lead the dance, defeat him at pretty much every step of the way. In the 3rd round, he's got to know he's down 2. So he wakes up and decides, like, I got to make this happen. The wrestling looked a little bit better in that 3rd round. He walked him down. He landed some good shots. It was his best round, but certainly not enough to win the fight. Maybe he won the round, but that's as far as it went. Makapa loses. It's been 2 years since then. My worry, I guess, here is that he was so slow to get going against Asakura, and he kind of just stood in front of him and watched him. And Asakura had a speed advantage. He's a natural kickboxer, and he's a little bit faster than him. With De Jesus, it's like he is, in my opinion, he's going to be the faster man. He's going to be the longer man, and he is a bit of a tricky guy to get a read on. So if Texera just kind of stares at him a little bit too long, you're going to have one guy kind of go up a little bit on the scorecards, or at least make this dicey, make this greasy, make this close. And then I just don't want to lose on a split decision Texera. Like, you've seen it happen before. I'm sure it's going to be able to happen again. But if you are a Texera fan, or if you were like, Cody, give me one reason to not bet this De Jesus guy. If you go on Texera's Instagram, he's 34 years old, but like, oh my God. Does Bellator test? Does the Mohegan Sun in Uncasville, Connecticut care? Because like, you could grade cheese off his abs, man. He's like cut from stone. So do I want to bet against him? Not particularly. But every favorite going to win on this Bellator card? No, they're not all going to win. So which are some of them that I think could be able to come through? I'm looking at Daniel Vical as an underdog with a shot, and I'm looking at John De Jesus as an underdog with a shot. The rest of them I couldn't really care for. It's a 10-fight card, so perfect world, 8 favorites and 2 underdogs. But to recap really quick, we're going to go with Moldovsky, but we don't really agree with the price tag. Liz Carmouche by decision. That should be good. Daniel Vical, too much backlash. Underdog price against Keone Diggs, who we just don't know enough about. We'll take that underdog shot. Plus Diggs, first time making 45. You're really going to want to watch the weigh-ins. I got a feeling he doesn't make it. Sidney Outlaw, another guy that's going to struggle on weigh-ins, so maybe you wait until you see him hit the scale. But I got to feel that Jury was an underdog as well. 3 underdogs, baby. Give me 7 favorites and 3 underdogs. I'll take Miles Jury. I think they just keep the fight standing, use the better striking. He's got to keep his back off against the cage, though. That'll be important. Christian Edwards, the line's a lot better against Simon Bayong, but it's going to be a much tougher much tougher fight. Soaring back a little bit too long for Bobby Lee. Use the striking, keep the fight standing, back him up, land the better shots. Isaiah Hoket, this is a shot in the dark. We don't even know what he's capable of, but we know he can wrestle. Not at an elite level, but at a good enough level that he should be able to just take down Corey Samuels and do what he's got to do for his first pro victory. Jalen Bates, this kid I actually do like. 450 seems pretty fair to me. Taylor Johnson, maybe I like him a lot more than I should like him. If that's the case, hit me up on Twitter. Hit me up in the comment section. Save me from myself. But I really do think that just, again, styles make fights. And he's 30, but at 6-2, like he just doesn't have a ton of experience. He's going to keep getting better. And even if he just gets marginally better, that should be enough to take out Lance Wright. And then the curtain jerker, what a hell of a prelim. Bellator is quickly... That's why they're the best of the bees. You know what I mean? Like the curtain jerker is John Texera, a badass who's fought in the best guys on their roster, who's fought in Rising in Japan, and he was on the Ultimate Fighter, he was on the UFC. This guy, 23-5, sick record, is taking on John DeJesus in your prelim, like prelim opener. Crazy shit. And it'd be great if we could kick that off with an underdog. If we don't, whatever, there's plenty of time to rebuild. If you put DeJesus on parlays, which, only degenerate would do, but that we'll see come Friday. We'll see come Friday. Until Friday, good luck. I think I got to jump on some PFL stuff now because, my God, PFL, got to be certain this time around before I put 1 cent. I want to know who's judging. So until the PFL video comes out, thanks for joining us on Breaking Down the Bees for Bellator 261. And let's hopefully, I would say, kick off the weekend on a high note, but it's just a Friday. There's 2 cards on the Friday. Stupid PFL. Why not run on Thursday? This is your day, man. You have the 1 day of the week on the Thursday. We enjoy watching on Thursday. Now they got to go to head-to-head with Bellator. So as you can see, Bellator stack card, that's where I'm going to be watching. I'll be watching both, but I'm into this offering. Anyways, questions, concerns.